Hey, deep divers. Ready for a deep dive into some headlines that might have left you going, huh, what's that all about?
We're going beyond just the surface today, connecting those dots, finding the patterns.
I'm all for it. So we've got this headline from The Hindu about the Supreme Court upholding Section 6A of the Citizenship Act.
Right, and that one might sound like legal jargon, but it's got real consequences, especially for folks in Assam.
Yeah, we're talking families who've called Assam home for generations, suddenly facing questions about their right to even be there.
It really gets to the heart of what it means to be Indian, doesn't it? Especially in a place like Assam with its unique history.
You're saying unique history. Does that have to do with the Assam Accord? I vaguely remember hearing about that.
Exactly. That agreement back in '85, after years of, unrest, it set a specific date.
A date. Okay, what date are we talking about here?
March 24, 1971. That's the cutoff for determining Indian citizenship in Assam. Anyone arriving from Bangladesh before that date eligible, but anyone after.
Okay, so that's different from the rest of India, right? Adds a whole other layer to this.
You got it. Two sets of rules within the same country. And that's led to some debate about, equality under the Indian Constitution.
So this recent Supreme Court ruling basically says, yeah, Assam, you get to keep doing things your way.
In a nutshell. And it makes you wonder how this will impact all the talk about the Citizenship Amendment Act, the CAA.
Oh, the CAA.
Yeah.
Right, that's been a hot topic for a while now.
Because it's adding even more complexity, right? The CAA from 2019 aims to speed up citizenship for certain religious minorities.
Those who faced persecution in neighboring countries, right? I'm following.
But it excludes Muslim immigrants.
Yeah.
And that sparked a lot of debate.
Yeah, some argue that goes against India's whole secular foundation, right?
Exactly. And then on top of that, remember the National Register of Citizens, the NRC?
Vaguely, it was all over the news a while back.
That aimed to identify illegal immigrants in Assam using that same 71 cutoff from the Accord.
Okay, and how did that go?
Not smoothly, to say the least. The process was a mess. Tons of paperwork, delays, confusion, and it ended up leaving a lot of genuine Indian citizens in limbo.
Wow, what a bureaucratic nightmare. Okay, so we've got the Assam Accord focused on a specific date, then there's the CAA focused on religion.
And the NRC trying to sort it all out, it's like trying to untangle a giant knot.
A giant knot with real people's lives caught up in it.
Uh-huh.
And that reminds me of another legal debate with huge human consequences, the marital rape issue.
Ah, yes, that's been in the news again with the Supreme Court hearing petitions about it.
Because right now in India, a husband can't be charged with raping his wife. It's like marriage is a get-out-of-jail-free card.
It's a complex issue rooted in how the law has been interpreted for decades.
But in this day and age, it just seems so outdated and frankly wrong.
Many would agree with you there. The argument is that it's a holdover from colonial times.
When women didn't have the same rights as they do now.
Exactly. Back then, the law viewed wives as almost property of their husbands, not as individuals with their own rights.
It's mind-boggling that such an outdated law is still on the books.
And it shows how much impact those old laws can have even today.
Absolutely. So we got these two big stories, the Assam citizenship issue and the marital rape debate.
Both of them showing how India is grappling with laws made in a totally different time.
Trying to make sense of them in today's world.
And it makes you wonder what other laws might need a rethink.
So much to consider. And speaking of a lot to consider, let's shift gears to India's role on the world stage. Shall we?
Because India's been making some bold moves internationally, haven't they?
That's for sure. From what I've been reading, it seems like they're stepping up as a global power.
And not shying away from flexing their diplomatic muscles.
It's fascinating. So let's start with the good stuff. India is offering a line of credit to Mauritius for a water pipeline project.
That's a big deal right there, stepping up as a development partner in a big way.
Right. And here's what caught my eye. This isn't just about aid, it's about economics, too.
You're picking up on something really important, this line of credit. It's in rupees.
Instead of U.S. dollars. Now, that's interesting. What's the significance of that?
Well, it could be a sign of things to come. A move away from the dollar's dominance in international finance.
Wow, so are we talking about a future where global aid and trade happen in rupees?
It's a possibility. India's been pushing for this for a while now.
Trying to position the rupee as a major player in the global economy.
Exactly. It's all about influence and leverage.
So that's one side of the coin. India as a benevolent global partner. But then there's the other side.
The diplomatic standoff with Canada.
That's been making headlines all over the world. Diplomats being expelled, accusations flying back and forth.
It's a delicate situation, to say the least.
To put it mild. So what's the backstory here? How did we get to this point?
It all revolves around the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar last year.
Niger, the Khalistani activist, right?
That's the one Canada believes Indian agents were involved, and they haven't been shy about saying so.
And they even use that term persons of interest, which got a pretty strong reaction from India.
Rightfully so.
Yeah.
From a diplomatic standpoint, it's a way of expressing serious concern without making a direct accusation.
But even that subtle jab was enough to set things off.
And it escalated quickly, with both sides expelling diplomats, scaling back their presence in each other's countries.
It's like they're playing a high-stakes game of diplomatic chicken.
And the stakes are high. It's not just about one incident, it's about broader issues of sovereignty and security.
So what happens next? Is there a way out of this diplomatic deadlock?
That's the million-dollar question. Both sides have dug in their heels, so it'll take some serious diplomacy to find a way forward.
A delicate dance, to say the least.
Huh?
Well, we've gone from courtroom drama to global power plays in just a few minutes.
And we're not done yet.
Because up next, we're diving into the future of warfare.
Where things get really interesting.
AI-powered weapons, autonomous drones, the ethics of war fought with algorithms.
Buckle up, deep divers. It's about to get futuristic. It's like we're looking at two different sides of India at the same time.
Right. On one hand, you've got this incredible push for high-tech weaponry AI in the military.
And on the other, you've got this very real struggle to make sure everyone, even in remote villages, has access to basic justice.
It's almost like India's living in two different futures at once.
It makes you think, what does progress really mean if it doesn't reach everyone?
It's a question worth asking, especially when we're talking about things like AI, which can either bridge gaps or widen them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And these aren't just abstract ideas we're talking about.
Right. These are decisions with real-life consequences for real people.
Like, imagine you're a farmer in a village who needs to settle a land dispute.
And on the other side of the country, there's a soldier relying on AI to make split-second decisions in battle.
It's the same country, but two very different experiences of technology.
And it highlights just how important it is to make sure progress is inclusive and equitable.
Absolutely. Because technology without justice, well, that's not progress at all.
Well said. Speaking of justice, we can't ignore the elephant in the room, that Canada situation.
It's about more than just one incident, isn't it?
Exactly. This whole standoff has really exposed some deeper tensions on the world stage.
Particularly when it comes to how countries deal with groups they see as threats.
Especially when those groups have support in other countries.
It's a tough balancing act. Canada has to consider its own Sikh population.
While India is making it crystal clear that they won't tolerate anything they see as a threat to their security, even if it's happening on foreign soil.
It's a classic example of how domestic politics and international relations can collide.
And how those collisions can have global consequences.
It's a reminder that we're living in an interconnected world where one country's actions can have ripple effects far beyond their borders.
So how does India navigate this new world order? They want to be seen as a global leader, but also stand their ground on certain issues.
It's a delicate dance, and they're still figuring out the steps.
On one hand, they're stepping up as a development partner, offering aid and expertise.
But on the other, they're not afraid to assert their own interests, even if it ruffles some feathers.
And that takes us back to that rupee-denominated loan we talked about earlier.
Right. Could this be a sign that India is strategically positioning itself for a future where the rupee plays a much bigger role on the world stage?
It's a fascinating thought. Imagine a world where the dollar isn't the only game in town.
It would be a major shift in the balance of power, and India seems to be laying the groundwork.
It's like we're witnessing a slow and steady economic revolution.
And it all comes back to influence and leverage in a globalized world.
It's a high-stakes game, and India's playing to win. But amidst all these global power plays, it's easy to forget the human side of things.
Absolutely. We can't lose sight of the fact that all these headlines, all these events have a real impact on people's lives.
So how do we bridge that gap between the global and the personal? How do we make sure that these big picture issues resonate with people on an individual level?
It starts with awareness and understanding. We need to connect those dots between what's happening in the world and how it affects our own lives.
And that's not always easy, especially when we're bombarded with information from all sides.
It's about being critical thinkers, questioning what we hear, and seeking out diverse perspectives.
Because in the end, it's about more than just knowing the facts.
It's about understanding the why behind the what and figuring out what role we want to play in shaping the future.
Because we all have a role to play, whether it's staying informed, engaging in meaningful conversations, or taking action in our own communities.
Every little bit counts. Because the future isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we create together.
And speaking of creating the future, let's talk about the ethical dilemmas of artificial intelligence.
Because it's not just about drones and warfare anymore, is it? AI is everywhere.
It's in our phones, our homes, our workplaces. It's even recommending what we should watch next.
And with that ubiquity comes a whole host of ethical questions.
Like, how do we ensure that AI is used for good, that it promotes fairness, and doesn't perpetuate existing biases?
These are questions we need to be asking ourselves right now before it's too late.
Because the technology is developing faster than our ability to fully grasp its implications.
It's like we're building the plane while we're flying it.
And we need to make sure it doesn't crash and burn.
Which is why it's so important to have these conversations about ethical AI to establish guidelines and safeguards.
To make sure that AI serves humanity, not the other way around.
Exactly. Because in the end, it's about using technology to create a better world for everyone.
A world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive and reach their full potential.
And that's a future worth striving for. And it's a future we can build together if we're willing to put in the work.
And speaking of building a better future, let's circle back to that issue of access to justice in India.
Because as much as technology can be a force for good, it can also widen existing inequalities.
Especially in a country like India, where a significant portion of the population still lacks access to basic technology.
The digital divide is a very real problem, and it's something we need to address head on.
Because we can't talk about progress and justice without ensuring that everyone has an equal opportunity to benefit.
It's about bridging that gap between the haves and the have-nots and making sure that no one gets left behind.
So how do we do that? How do we bridge that digital divide?
It's a multifaceted challenge, and there's no easy solution.
But it starts with recognizing that technology is only part of the equation.
We need to address the underlying systemic issues that create inequality in the first place.
Things like poverty, lack of education, and discrimination.
Because throwing technology at a problem without addressing the root causes is like putting a Band-Aid on a broken bone.
It might make it look better on the surface, but it doesn't solve the underlying problem.
We need to invest in education infrastructure and social programs that empower people and create a more level playing field.
It's about creating a society where everyone has an equal chance to succeed, regardless of their background or their zip code.
And that's a future worth striving for, where technology is a tool for empowerment and equality, not a weapon of division.
Absolutely. It's about creating a world where everyone has the opportunity to reach their full potential, to live a life of dignity and purpose.
And that's what true progress looks like.
Well said. And that's a powerful message to carry with us as we navigate the complexities of the 21st century. It's like we've gone on this whole journey from these big global issues right down to the human element.
And that's what it always comes back to, doesn't it? The human element.
Because what's the point of progress if it doesn't actually make people's lives better?
Exactly. And sometimes progress means grappling with some really tough questions, challenging the status quo.
Like those families in Assam dealing with the fallout of the citizenship, ruling their whole lives, are being turned upside down.
It's a reminder that laws aren't just words on paper. They have a real tangible impact on people.
And that those laws often reflect deeply held beliefs about identity belonging, what it means to be a part of something.
And when those beliefs clash, that's when things get really interesting.
Like with the Canada situation, it's like two different visions of the world colliding.
And it highlights the challenges of navigating a globalized world where the lines between domestic and international are increasingly blurred.
So how do we even begin to make sense of it all?
It starts with understanding the complexities, acknowledging that there are multiple perspectives at play.
And being willing to listen to those perspectives even when we don't agree with them.
Because that's the only way we can even begin to find common ground.
And maybe even solutions that work for everyone involved.
It's about recognizing our shared humanity even in the midst of disagreements.
And remembering that at the end of the day, we're all in this together.
Trying to build a better future for ourselves and for generations to come.
And that brings us back to the idea of individual action.
Because it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of these global challenges.
Like, what can one person possibly do to make a difference?
But the truth is, every action, no matter how small, has a ripple effect.
So whether it's educating ourselves on the issues,
engaging in respectful dialogue with people who hold different views,
or supporting organizations that are working to make a positive impact.
we all have a role to play in shaping the future.
Because the future isn't something that just happens to us.
It's something we create through our choices and our actions.
So let's choose to be informed, engaged, and empowered.
Let's choose to build a future that we can all be proud of.
That's a great place to leave it today. Deep Divers, thanks for joining us on this journey.
It's been a pleasure as always.
Until next time, keep asking those tough questions. Keep those conversations going and keep diving deep.